Good afternoon, and welcome to the Wednesday afternoon conference call with Trusts Unlimited. This is Jim George speaking. I'm the non-attorney spokesman and facilitator for Trusts Unlimited, and I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to listen to this call, particularly those of you calling in for the first time and those that will be listening to the replay over the next 24 to 48 hours. We like to move quickly through these calls, bottom line the information for you. Before we begin, I wanted to mention that there are a number of individuals that have contacted us. I like to try to get back to people within 24 to 48 hours at the latest, but we've been slammed lately, and so there is about nearly a dozen calls that I need to return. Those calls will be returned today and certainly by the end of business by tomorrow so that I can assist you in every way. We've had a number of contacts from existing clients that have questions, prospective clients, and there's been a lot of contact with some of our people globally because there seems to be a lot going on. And right up into this call, I've been trying to contact a number of people to separate fact from fiction and rumor. There's a lot of things that's going on. There's a lot of confusion. There's a lot of differing opinions as to how this thing's going to proceed, and I'm referring to the reinstitution and revaluation of the dinar and some of these other currencies. On the good side, though, this is exactly what happened with the reinstitution of the Kuwaiti dinar in the early 90s. It was going to happen. It wasn't going to happen. It was going to happen at any time. It wasn't going to happen for 10 years. The rate was going to be 10 cents. The rate was going to be $10. They were all over the map. But then, out of nowhere, it seemed it just happened. And I suspect that and hope that that's going to be the case with the dinar and, of course, some of these other currencies. So let's talk a little bit about what's going on in Iraq and why there seems to be these delays. There have been some legitimate reasons for it. For example, we are still in the midst of Ramadan, which this year was from April 1st and through to May 1st, which is a very solemn month of prayer and fasting for Islam. Then, of course, right after that is Eid al-Fitr, which occurs on May 3rd this year, and this is the feast and celebration after a month of prayer and fasting. So the likelihood of dramatic political, financial, and economic transactions is kind of unlikely during that period of time. And then, of course, we have the intransigence in the parliament with the failure thus far to pass the 2022 budget. And, of course, the 800-pound gorilla is the seating of the new government. Now, with regard to the budget, I've always been a little bit perplexed by the absolutists who say, well, you can't possibly change the exchange rate prior to the passage of the budget. Why not? As a matter of fact, I would argue it makes more sense to have the proper exchange rate prior to the passage of a budget. If, for example, they passed the budget 2 weeks ago, or prior to the beginning of Ramadan, at a rate of whether it's $14.50, $11.90, and then they have a reinstitution, very complicated issue to then recalibrate the budget based on a change in the exchange rate. So, as far as I'm concerned, it makes more sense for the reinstitution, at least prior to the passage of the budget. Then there's the issue of the seating of the new government. And this is a very complicated situation for a lot of reasons. First, in my opinion, the parliamentary system is a complicated system. The particular parliamentary system that the Iraqi nation has established is even more complicated and, I would argue, convoluted. Then you lay on top of that all of the tribal and sectarian infighting that's going on. So it's just inherently complicated in this scenario. Now, where are we with regard to the parliament? Well, of course, after the election, we had delays because the losers went to the courts to claim that there was fraud. That was all kicked to the curb. So we ended up with the Sadrists having the largest block. However, they did not have a block large enough to simply put through whatever they wanted to put through. It seems that they were outnumbered by the coalition framework. What is the coalition framework? It's a loose confederation between the moderate and then more radical, even 12th Imam or Shia. So they were at an impasse there. Many thought that the Sadrists basically capitulated by allowing the coalition framework 40 days to establish a new government. We're 20 days into that 40-day moratorium. Actually, I think that what the Sadrists did was smart because it did two things for them. It allowed everyone to see that the coalition framework was just too disparate a group to actually come to terms with the new government. And it also allowed the Sadrists to form something called the tripartite coalition. What's that? It's a loose alliance with the Sadrists, Sunni factions, and the Kurds. So it looks as though that 40 days will end around May 15th, somewhere in that area. And the window for a reinstitution that we were looking at for the last couple of weeks was from April 1st to May 15th. So we could possibly see a reinstitution in that time frame. We could see a reinstitution at any time. At this point, nothing surprises me. And because that's what's happened in the past, it just happened. It wouldn't surprise me if that were to happen again. Now, we also have to remember that the CBI has the unilateral authority to change the exchange rate. We also know that the Minister of Finance has entered into closed meetings with the IMF and the World Bank. So that, coupled with the unilateral authority granted to CBI, tells me that despite the chaos and confusion in the Parliament, things are proceeding along. Now, let's look at the worst-case scenario, which would be the abject failure of the Parliament to form a new government, and basically it's an unconstitutional situation because they failed to act. Well, what does that leave us? And remember, this has happened in the past. So if, for example, the Parliament would fail to seat a new government, this is the third or fourth time this will have occurred in the last, say, 15 years. So it's not unprecedented. So who's in place right now in the caretaker government? We have Kazemi as a prime minister, Salih as president of the republic, and al-Habussi is the speaker. And these are, in my opinion, all of the right people. So what could happen is the Parliament could just basically be dissolved. These individuals would be the default government that would be in place, which means, in my opinion, they could proceed with a number of things, including the reinstitution of the currency, and then, of course, revaluation through the IMF. Now, in my opinion, it's also doubtful that individuals that have been trying for a number of reasons to postpone, if not stop, the reinstitution altogether, it's doubtful to me that they'd be able to be successful in going to the courts to try to reverse a reinstitution of the currency for a number of reasons. But in the law, there's a concept called clean hands. In other words, how could individuals that were members of the Parliament who violated the Constitution and failed to seat a new government then go to the courts and argue that you can't reinstitute the currency because, in their opinion, that would be unconstitutional? I don't think that that's going to fly. So hopefully, either they're going to come to terms in the Parliament and establish a new government, or, having failed to do so, the individuals that are currently there would become the default caretaker government and perhaps the seated, or at least temporary government for this fiscal year, which in my opinion would result in the reinstitution within the window we're talking about, which was, again, from April 1st to May 15th. So that's where we are with the reinstitution. We're still in a much better place than we've ever been before, even though failure to seat the new government could complicate issues. I just don't see it stopping the reinstitution if everything else is in place. And remember, the international agencies want to see this done. The IMF wants to see this done. The World Bank wants to see this done. The World Trade Organization wants to see it done. I even think the U.S. Treasury at this point knows that by getting this done, the dinar will no longer be pegged to the U.S. dollar, but will be pegged to the IMF basket of currencies. Even with that knowledge, I think they're pretty much ready to proceed. Now, this brings us to the turnkey program that we put in place to assist those of you that hold dinar and other currencies. It's been over a decade since we decided to work with dinarians and established a trust program specifically designed for them, but which does have application beyond those of us have currencies, and we'll be getting into this. We knew that most of the individuals that hold these currencies are average, hardworking Americans who, for the first time, will be faced with the daunting task of managing a substantial amount of wealth that they've acquired literally overnight. So we decided that we needed to put a program in place to assist them. This is a two-phased program. Phase 1 is pre-RV. Phase 2 is post-RV. Pre-RV involves the establishment of a pre-RV package of asset protection trusts with the assignment of your currencies on paper to that trust package. Post-RV involves all of the products, services, and professional referrals that will be made available to you after the revaluation of the dinar and these other currencies. But let's start with Phase 1, which is, again, the establishment of a pre-RV package of asset protection trusts. Now, in our opinion, this is the best asset protection available domestically in the United States. Now, there are other entities that individuals can establish to provide some level of asset protection, but I'm going to touch on why they are inferior to the package that I'm going to be presenting to you shortly. For example, individuals can establish LLCs and sub-S corporations. And those entities are a good way to separate business assets and the liabilities that business assets can create from personal assets. The problem here is that the possession of these currencies is a personal asset. In addition, courts have ruled that LLCs and sub-S corporations that are owned in the majority by one person or a closely held group can be pierced for civil litigation. So they're not going to be appropriate for our needs. Individuals have established an entity referred to as a revocable living trust, sometimes referred to as living or loving trusts. Now, these trusts are established on a state-by-state basis, primarily to exempt your estate from the cost and delay of probate, and if properly structured, can substantially reduce and in some cases even eliminate the federal estate tax. But the revocable, living, or loving trusts can provide no privacy or asset protection. So they're going to be inappropriate for your needs. Some individuals have established non-grantor, pure, or constitutional trusts, which are a form of an irrevocable trust. The problem is these trusts have all been flagged by the IRS, and there's no amount of money you could pay our firm to write one of those trusts. Then there are the individual irrevocable trusts. They will provide the best level of asset protection relative to the entities that I've just described, but even the individual irrevocable trust has a flaw, and it's this. All of your assets and net worth are housed in that one individual trust. So if any asset or possession within that trust gets involved in civil litigation, that could necessarily drag all of your other assets and net worth into that litigation as well. The only way to avoid all of that is to establish a package of irrevocable trusts. And if you are the holder of currencies, the package would need to be established prior to the revaluation of the dinar and these other currencies. There are a number of reasons why you need to establish this trust package prior to the revaluation, but there are a number of reasons why you need to establish such a trust package whether you have currencies or not. So let's review these reasons. First, by establishing this trust package, you will preserve your privacy and your anonymity. That's because the assets within this trust package are sealed, meaning that the general public will have no knowledge of your net worth or your actual holdings. Now, that's important if you're holders of these currencies, but it's also important even if you do not possess these currencies, because what we've witnessed over the last few years is the creation, in essence, of a surveillance state. And this is one of the tools that can protect your privacy. In terms of civil litigation, we know that 1 in 4 millionaires over their lifetime will find themselves involved in civil litigation. But by putting your assets in this trust package, they're sealed, meaning that the general public, once again, inclusive of a potential plaintiff, would have no knowledge of your net worth or your actual holdings. Makes it very difficult for an individual to sue you if they don't know what you possess, because civil suits are about monetary awards. And since it's estimated that as many as 40% of all civil suits are nuisance suits, in other words, they just want you to give them a little bit of money to go away, these individuals are not going to pay a substantial retainer to try to pierce your trust. There will be no lawsuit. So the privacy that these trusts provide for you, whether you're a currency holder or not, is invaluable. Second, by establishing this trust package, you're going to avoid IRS scrutiny. If you are holding these currencies in direct title when they revalue, the IRS computers will most likely spit out an audit. And with the potential magnitude of this revaluation relative to your prior year's earnings, you're probably looking at a full-blown 6-year IRS audit. Such an audit would be time-consuming. It would certainly be frustrating because it's come along at the precise time that these currencies have revalued, and there's many other things you'd rather be doing. And third, the cost of a 6-year audit would probably be more than the cost of our asset protection trust package. In addition, and by establishing this trust package, on the other hand, you will avoid IRS scrutiny because you will have transferred the taxable event of this revaluation from yourself personally to the trust. Now, this is important for 2 reasons. There's less than a 10% chance of an IRS audit if the revaluation of these currencies were to occur within a rather sophisticated trust package such as ours. But second, and most importantly, even if the IRS determines to audit your trust, they can't do a 6-year audit. Why? Because the only taxable event within the trust will be the revaluation itself. The third reason you'd want to establish this trust package is if you plan on gifting currencies to family and friends. Now, philanthropic gifting can always be done on a tax-preferred basis, either pre- or post-RV. But in order to avoid a substantial 40% federal gift tax, you're going to need to gift currencies to family and friends prior to the revaluation. Now, if you're gifting currencies to individuals that you have no problem giving them the currency to exchange for themselves, or giving them the U.S. dollar lump sum after you have negotiated the exchange, that can be accomplished outside of a trust with a standard gift letter. But if you are hesitant for any reason to give any of these individuals the post-RV lump sum outright, then you can gift to them through our specially designed gift subtrust, which is part of our trust package. And because you are gifting the currencies through the gift subtrust, their U.S. dollars will be protected along with yours. In addition, the language of this subtrust allows you to gift up to a certain amount of a currency or currencies, meaning you can gift these individuals the U.S. dollar amount that you had in mind, irrespective of the exchange rate. And lastly, because you're gifting through this gift subtrust rather than directly giving them the currencies, you will be able to manage, invest, and distribute the money to these individuals as you deem appropriate. The fourth reason you'd want to establish this trust package is because it's been structured in such a way as to allow your estate to bypass the cost and delay of probate and the federal estate tax. I'll give you two quick scenarios. Scenario number one, you purchase 5 million dinar for $5,000. The day after that, those currencies revalue for $25 million. The day after that, you pass away, leaving your heirs an estate of $25 million. Now that estate must go through probate, a process that ordinarily can take anywhere from 6 to 18 months. But probate is a public disclosure process, meaning that the general public will be aware of the size of your estate, who your heirs are, and how much they each stand to inherit. So if anyone feels they have a legitimate claim against you, your estate, or your heirs, they can simply file that claim with a probate court. And that could tie the estate up for years, and in some cases even decades. And your heirs will have either limited access or no access at all to their respective inheritance until the probate process is completed. Then there's something called the federal estate tax. This is the tax that the federal government would assess in order for your estate to be transferred to your heirs. Under current law, approximately $10 million of that $25 million estate would bypass any federal estate tax, but the balance could be taxed as much as 65%. Now, this scenario is not only unacceptable, it's completely and totally avoidable. How? Scenario number two. You purchase 5 million dinar for $5,000. The day after that, you assign those currencies on paper to our asset protection trust package. The day after that, those currencies revalue for $25 million. The day after that, you pass away, leaving your heirs that very same estate of $25 million, but this time protected in our asset protection trust package. As a result, there will be no probate. There will be no public disclosure of your estate. Your heirs will have immediate access to their respective inheritance, and the federal estate tax will be zero, saving your heirs as much as 55% of their inheritance. The fifth reason you'd want to establish this trust package is for some very specific asset protection benefits. One pre-RV, one post-RV. Pre-RV, this trust package will allow you to circumvent something called the Uniform Fraudulent Transfer Act. Now, what does that mean? Under our system of civil procedure, you can only be sued for what you actually own in direct title or the value of property at the time you transfer it out of title to an entity like our trust package. So let's take the previous example from before. You purchase 5 million dinar for $5,000, transfer the currencies to our trust. They subsequently revalue for $25 million. You begin to live a lifestyle more reflective of your newfound wealth, and a couple of years down the road, someone sees that you're living rather comfortably and decides for whatever reason that they're going to sue you. Well, this prospective plaintiff better have a very strong case and very deep pockets, because this trust package has been structured in such a way as to make it extremely expensive and extremely time-consuming to pursue civil litigation. But second, and most importantly, once any prospective plaintiff learns that pursuant to the Uniform Fraudulent Transfer Act, the only thing they could ever win by way of a civil award would be $5,000, the value of the currencies at the time you transferred them out of title and to our trust package, and none of the post-RV value of $25 million, there will be no lawsuit. Post-RV, there's a benefit I like to refer to as limited liability stop-loss. This protects you from future bad acts after you have acquired this wealth. This protection is accomplished through a legal strategy called segregation of assets. This is why a package of trusts is the best asset protection benefits available, and I'll give you an example of how it would work. Once again, we'll use the same example. You purchase 5 million dinar, transfer the currencies to our trust. They subsequently revalue for 25 million. Now that you have 25 million in trust, you decide to make some purchases. So you purchase a larger primary residence, a vacation home, perhaps a half a dozen rental properties for tax write-off and additional cash flow, a couple of cars, a boat, and let's say an RV. But as you purchase these items, you place each of them in their own separate sub-trust to be managed by your master trust. Now, how does this protect you from future bad acts? Well, let's say one day you're driving one of your new cars, you have an accident, the accident is clearly your fault, and tragically someone is seriously injured or even killed. Well, the family of the victim is going to want to sue you. But remember, civil suits are about monetary awards, and you don't legally own anything. So the plaintiffs would be left to sue the owner of the car that you were driving. Well, who owns that car? One of your sub-trusts, of which you are merely the beneficiary. And what's in that sub-trust? Merely that one car, and of course the car insurance policy. In that scenario, the car insurance carrier will negotiate an out-of-court settlement with the victim's family. You will not be involved in those rather unpleasant negotiations. The car insurance carrier will repair or replace your car, making you whole. And this is important. All of your other assets and net worth are safely protected in the other sub-trusts. Why? Because under the law, those separate sub-trusts are separate legal persons or entities having nothing to do with the accident in dispute. And therefore, the plaintiffs would have no standing to pursue a separate legal entity or person, thereby preserving your other assets and net worth. So this trust package works a lot like a commercial barge, where all of the valuable cargo is stored in a series of small compartments. Why? In the event that any compartment is ever breached, the only potential loss would be the cargo in that one compartment. The cargo in the other compartments is safe and secure due to the firewalls, and the barge will never sink. Now, these benefits are lost to you if you are, in fact, the holder of dinar and other currencies, and you have not established your trust package prior to the revaluation of these currencies. But this trust package is invaluable for anyone of any means who wants to retain their privacy, who wants to protect their wealth, and who wants to protect themselves from the surveillance state that's being created, unfortunately, as we are witness to at the present time. Now, there is one other benefit, and it's this. If you are, in fact, the holder of one of our pre-RV asset protection trust packages, then you will be eligible to participate in Phase 2, all of the product, services, and professional referrals that will be made available to you after the revaluation of the dinar. Now, I'll just make mention of one here today. Trusts Unlimited will be sponsoring a post-RV seminar to be held in Disney World, Florida, approximately 30 days after the revaluation of the Iraqi dinar. The only way that seminar will not be held is if we have a problem with the outbreak of COVID. I do not anticipate that, but that would be the only thing that would be an obstruction. If that were, in fact, to occur, then we would be putting a DVD together in office and making it available to everyone. And, of course, we will always be available by phone or email to everyone that is the holder of one of our trusts. Now, present at this seminar will, of course, be the staff of Trusts Unlimited to instruct and assist you with the management and funding of your trust packages. In addition, many of our clients have expressed desires to establish scholarship funds, foundational trusts, special needs trusts, charitable remainder trusts, and even some of the more complicated 501c3 nonprofit and offshore trusts. And we'll be happy to assist you with that, and that would involve the transfer of funds from your asset protection trust to these newly formed entities. We'll also have our tax specialists available. With this newfound wealth, you're going to need to understand some of the more sophisticated tax strategies to legally reduce your tax exposure. We will also have our independent fee-based wealth managers there as well. You're going to want to reposition assets as quickly as possible for a number of reasons. First, we know statistically that 95% of all windfalls, however large and from whatever source, are unfortunately lost within 3 to 5 years due to inexperience, mismanagement, and fraud. We also know that the general global shift from fiat-based to Basel III compliant commodity-backed currencies is going to create extremely volatile and inflationary pressures on currencies and financial markets. So you're going to want to transition a substantial amount of your portfolio to tangible assets. And, of course, we can assist you with that as well. So after you have protected your wealth by transitioning to our trust package and your currencies assigned to the trust package pre-RV, then we can assist you with the critical wealth management issues post-RV. Now, our trust package is initially a package of 10 trusts consisting of one master trust that would hold your assigned currencies pre-RV, and then financial assets like bank accounts and savings accounts and investment accounts post-RV, one optional gift subtrust, which can at any time be converted to a standard subtrust, and then 8 additional standard subtrusts to hold physical assets like homes, cars, boats, etc. In addition, we can create additional subtrusts beyond the initial 8 if necessary post-RV. Now, this trust package was initially a package that we've utilized for our more affluent clients before we got involved with the Dinarians, a package that had an initial cost of anywhere from $6,000 to $10,000. But when we decided to create a package for Dinarians, we knew that price tag would be unaffordable for many. So by simplifying the package, we've been able to reduce the cost to $3,000. And there are a number of ways you can pay for that. If you pay us up front, we'll discount the price further to $2,500, saving you an additional $500. If that's not possible, we've even created a deferred payment package. You'd make an initial payment of $525, which sum would basically offset our out-of-pocket costs just to produce and deliver your trust package to you. The balance of the $3,000 would then be paid in $100 monthly installments. We will charge no interest. The only proviso is once the revaluation of the Iraqi dinar occurs, then any unpaid balance would need to be paid within 30 days. So with the deferred payment package, anyone who understands the need for getting their affairs in order and their trust in force prior to the revaluation of the dinar and these other currencies should be able to afford to do so. One other suggestion. We do accept credit cards. Pay us up front with a credit card. Not only will you get the $500 discount, but the minimum payment on your card would be less than the $100 a month you'd pay under our deferred payment arrangement. But we will work with you in whatever method works best for you. Our objective is to help you get your affairs in order and your trust in force prior to the revaluation for all of the reasons that I've stated here. Now, we are going to go to a Q&A in just a moment. When we do, I will give you our contact information, so I suggest you have a pen and paper handy. But before we do, I want to tell you a little bit about Trusts Unlimited and why you should seriously consider contacting us to get our initial package. Our trust package was authored by Robert Bly. He specialized in the area of estate planning, asset protection, and offshore planning for 40 years. I myself hold degrees in political science, macroeconomics, and finance. I've worked in those areas for over 39 years, and I, along with my clients, were personally involved in the reinstatement of the Kuwaiti dinar in the early 90s. So between the two of us, Robert Bly and I have nearly 80 years' experience working precisely in this niche area, and I frankly know of no firm that can make that claim. Now, for those of you that do hold currencies or are people of wealth, you know that, unfortunately, civil litigation is a fact of life, because civil litigation is about monetary payments, and so people of substantial means are targets for civil litigation. And there are a number of things that occur in life, and unfortunately, it's precisely those times that we lose control of our assets are when things occur in life that make that even more difficult. If you've lived for any length of time, you've either experienced in your own life or through friends and family things like unexpected divorce, permanent incapacitation, the onset of dementia, premature death, and prolonged and complicated probate processes. Then there are, of course, business losses and investment losses, even bankruptcies. The number 2 loss of wealth now in the aggregate, courtesy of the information age, is identity theft. But the number 1 loss of personal wealth remains confiscation through civil litigation. Anything you own in direct title can be taken from you under our system of civil litigation. So the only way that you can, in fact, manage, protect, and control everything at all times and in all circumstances is through the establishment of a package of irrevocable trusts, and particularly if you have an asset like these currencies that you're anticipating a substantial increase in value. And we at Trusts Unlimited will do everything we can to help you accomplish your personal and financial objectives both pre- and post-RV as we understand them. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to open the Q&A, and then I'm going to go ahead and give you our contact information. And while I'm waiting for any potential questions, I'd like to give you our contact information. You can go to our website, which is trusts with an S, unlimitedllc.com. Our email address is trusts with an S, unlimitedllc@gmail.com. And our phone service is 307-274-4122. If you will contact us, I'll be happy to send you our initial no-obligation package. It does contain everything you need if you decide to apply for one of our trust packages, but again, you're under absolutely no obligation to do so. Please review the package. It has a lot of information about us, about trusts, about the revaluation of these currencies. You can contact us by phone or email if you have any questions. We'll be happy to assist you, and there will be no consultation fee. We do have a caller in the queue here. This is area code 312. That's 312. Go ahead. 312, are you there? Well, it seems that we lost area code 312. That was our only question for this afternoon. I apologize. I don't know. Let me see if I can try this one more time. Well, I've tried, folks. I don't know why we couldn't get through. I don't see. Let me see here. No, we don't have any callers in the queue. We did have one individual. We seem to have lost that person. I apologize for that. So we're going to be signing off for this week. We will have a call, of course, next week as we do every week. Certainly if something of a dramatic nature were to happen between now and then, we'll try to get out an emergency email and schedule an emergency conference call. But failing that, we will be back next week, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Thanks so much for listening, everyone. Have a great week. Bye-bye.